Hi, and welcome to another edition of Probeline, brought to you by the fine folks who support the GrassRoots Community Network. We hope to give you a chance to get to meet the people who want to represent you on City Council and run for the Aspen City Council. And today, we're going to get a chance to meet Kimbo Brown-Schirato, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You did.
Okay, welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, you want to run for City Council?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Why?
I've been involved for many years in various levels of the community. I started with Springboard Aspen, which was the Aspen Community Foundation's sort of young professional arm.
Leader kind of thing.
Yeah, where we did, initially our job was to raise money and then give grants out to various nonprofits. And in that process, we realized that if you're a nonprofit and you're applying for a grant, it doesn't matter if you're applying for a $20 grant or a $250,000 grant. It's the same amount of money there's the same amount of work and effort that goes into it. And during this time, it was kind of a tenuous time on Springboard, and I was, 26, 27. But what we did is we went through some sort of strategic planning effort where we really looked at kind of who we are and why we existed and the amount of effort that we didn't want to put on nonprofits for a very small amount of money that we were able to raise from our events and whatnot, to trying to figure out why Springboard existed and what we ended up coming up with through this strategic planning process that the Community Foundation actually had. They helped us with some funding for a technical assistance grant, but we realized that Springboard existed to develop high potential young philanthropic leaders. So I led this with my co-chair Corey Lowe at the time, to really just try and set Springboard up for success for the next 10 years. My understanding is that they are no longer in existence, so I don't know if that was successful or not, but I do think that if the goal was to create young philanthropic leaders, we had been successful in the fact that I ended up serving on the actual big board of the Community Foundation for 6 years. Many of our members have over time sat on, for quote unquote grown-up boards. So that was sort of my intro into the community and public service. From that, we were invited to be involved in the early days of the Cradle to Career initiative through Aspen Community Foundation. And I've always sort of had an entrepreneurial kind of, look at the world. And one of the things that they realized where kids were essentially sort of falling off the wagon was in this, there were 3 times. So it's early childhood education, then sort of the after school when you're in middle school, those hours between when school finishes and when your mom and dad get home, and then in the pre-collegiate. So I created an organization called College Trek, working with Kathy Klug and Terry Rigney, who were the college counselors at the time, to help try and the seniors in both in Aspen, Basalt, and Carbondale high schools apply to college. And so I wanted to create a volunteer opportunity for young professionals who wanted to make a difference, use their brains, but have a very short kind of volunteer, like on a weekly basis, I can help you for an hour. To also, to just try and make a difference, but not really, hang or check coats at big events in town. So that was a relatively successful program. The kicker was that everybody who was on our executive committee no longer lives here anymore because they couldn't stay. So, which goes to the whole, nobody can stay in this valley, or not. You know what I'm trying to say with that.
Well, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's not the easiest place to stay, and many people move on for various reasons. I then became a mom and didn't have time to help other kids. I needed to help my own. It was a great, another great kind of example of how our community steps up and tries to make a difference, be it in whatever school, or whatever sort of capacity they can. My community foundation involvement was an incredible segue into like the grown-up boards, but watching how the Cradle to Career initiative had grown over those years has been so satisfactory for me, and I hope that it has moved the needle for our service population. And that service population, I don't know if you know, but it's from Aspen to Parachute, and the idea is to support every child from birth to either college or post-secondary, whatever they choose to do. And so it's a difficult thing, and hopefully over time it'll bear really meaningful results. And then in this, sorry, I'm telling you like a very long-winded reason why I'm running, and then part of in 2014, Mitzi Rapkin, who is the communications person at the city, Steve Skadron wanted to get young people, 18 to 40-year-olds, involved in policy in the city, because nobody at the time was anywhere close to that in terms of being involved. So a group of us, and with the support of council at the time, created this Next Generation Advisory Commission, and our job was to advance the policy interests of 18 to 40-year-olds who either work or live in Aspen. And that was a huge thing for me, is because at the time I didn't live in Aspen. We were in Carbondale, and we were there for 10 years, but I still felt like Aspen was my community. And so through that, I realized that policy is an effective way to try and better the lives of our constituents. And quite admittedly, 18 to 40-year-olds were my constituents at the time, because that was the purview of that commission. But I just feel like it's a natural progression for me to do the next step. And I'm not sure if I'll be if it will be a more effective way to do things, being an elected official, but I'm willing to give it a shot. That was a long-winded answer, wasn't it?
That was wonderful. And part of what I took away from it was this ingrained sense of community service. Yeah. And it makes me wonder, where did that come from? I become curious about that.
So I grew up in South Africa, so apartheid South Africa, right? So when I was in grade 1, we still had segregated schools. So my mom made sure that I went to a private Catholic school that allowed every child of every color to attend. She instilled in me a very strong sense of right and wrong, and apartheid was wrong. So my first kind of segue into, this is so funny that I'm even remembering this, but I was a mini city councillor when I was 12 or 11 or something. But
so now you're ready for the grown-up
Yeah,
board.
exactly. So 20-some, 30, who knows, man, 30-something years later. But part of that was you were kind of selected by your school to represent your school in this mini city council. So it was the big city of Johannesburg, hugely diverse group of student bodies, and we would do things like collect Easter eggs for Easter for underprivileged children, or get your grannies to knit squares so you could like put blankets together, or those types of things. But we even got to meet Nelson Mandela just after, it was in 1994 actually, so just as he had been released from prison, a group of us got to meet him. And that was, hugely transformative for me. And I've just always been involved. I've just been kind of like the involved nerd, who loves people, I've also always stood up for the person who I believe is underrepresented. I've just, bullies are not my vibe, and just trying to be a voice for people who feel like they don't have one. So it's been ingrained in me in a long time. And the thing about this community is that it's small enough that you actually can make a real difference. And you see the people that I see you on the streets, and we have a chat, and we don't shout at each other except for on social media, which is silly. But we have discussions, and we can come to what I hope would be agreements for everybody over that could better our community for the long run. But what really made me double down on this community is I lost my dad about 10 years ago, quite suddenly, and before I knew it, and my husband and I had to move, we had to fly back to South Africa really quickly, and it was at the start of the Rugby World Cup. So flights were, like, literally we spent $10,000 on flights because of Soccer World Cup. And within 2 or 3 days of me leaving, we had a benefit account set up by the community, and it was fully funded. And so to me it was like, geez, like, this is the type of place that we live in, that people will, and so that's when I kind of like doubled, and I doubled down, and I was like, this is the type of place that I want to live in and really contribute to for the long run.
So how long have you been in the community, the larger community, in and out of Aspen?
About 16 years. So I came for a ski season right out of university. As you know, lots of South Africans come here, and then joined what we joke is I met my husband day one, job one, and he taught me how to be a bartender at the Silver Tree Hotel, my love of bluegrass kind of came from there too, because I don't know if you know Cash Cashman and John Summers and Twerp Anderson. I don't actually know where those guys are at the moment. I need to reach out to them. But John was part of John Denver's band, but they played bluegrass every weekend. And so my husband and I, it was a super quiet little lobby bar, but so we would talk for like 5 hours and then serve a drink, then talk some more. So we had a great kind of, we just got to know each other very quickly. And the thing that I appreciated about him is he never took my rubbish. You know, he would always push back when I was, because I'm a strong-willed person with very specific I'm just a strong-willed person, and so that was what attracted me to him. To him, he just would be like, no, that's nonsense. Sorry, I probably shouldn't swear on TV, right?
Thank you.
So left for a summer, did a little bit of like an extra little gap year, I suppose, lived in Mallorca, lived in Zimbabwe, and then came back and just did the visa thing for a number of years, and it just got increasingly hard. And so then joined what we call the Aspen Green Card Club. But yeah, we've been together ever since, and became a citizen. Actually, only became a citizen when my dad passed away, so I could sponsor my mom's green card, and she now lives here in Carbondale at the Crystal Meadows Retirement Village.
Wonderful.
After living with us for 4 years. So again, my husband is a saint, and she's wonderful too. But
so you really have put down roots here.
Yeah.
You have a career, a kid, a husband, a mom.
Yep.
All in the valley.
Yeah. And a business. We started a little van conversion business about 3 years ago. So we build people's camper vans. It's called Aspen Custom Vans.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were connected with that.
Yeah. So that's our little startup business. That has been a great adventure, and we need other people to do our books for us because we fight about it. Things you learn, right? Like when you're building a business, it's hard to. Sorry, I messed up there. It's hard to kind of grow and not do the mom and pop operation after there's a certain threshold where that's not possible.
Well, there are these kind of critical points.
Yes.
Where division of labor comes up, and you try and figure out who's going to do what, and do we need more people? And
Yeah. So we're trying to slowly and carefully grow, realizing that this COVID, the post-COVID dip will probably arrive within the next year or so.
As opposed to the COVID boom.
Yes, in which we have been incredibly grateful and lucky to have.
Yeah.
But we don't want to have huge fixed costs, next year, and then all of a sudden we don't have the demand to meet those fixed costs.
Right.
But it's been fun. Jason does a good job. Yeah.
So a lot of it, if I'm hearing it correctly, please tell me if I'm not.
Yeah.
But a lot of your volunteer work seems to have been focused on both creating environments for children and then empowering young adults to also do community service. Am I saying that?
Yeah,
or philanthropy.
It's more about for me. It's more about trying to address issues with a sort of from an entrepreneurial eye. So see a problem and try and figure out a solution. So that was like the college trek thing. So that's, you know, that was on that side of things. But on the other side, what I think I'm really good at is gathering people together to try and have a problem, to try and solve a problem together that helps people. So, and yeah, developing young people to feel like they have a voice and they can make a difference has been, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Because it seems like, I'm trying to think, well, city council, you know, it has a whole basket of problems that is thrown in front of it. And are some more interesting than others? Is the process interesting?
For me, yes. So to answer your question, the short of it is, yes, there are some more that are more interesting than others just by virtue of the fact that we've done work on it through NextGen and through separate. And those two things that I'm very passionate about are housing, quite obviously, but then also childcare. And it's really just to figure out the best way to leverage already collected revenues that the city has already decided to collect. So from the childcare, from Kids First, the sales tax, right? And then housing, we have the RET and other funding sources for that. But are we really leveraging them to the best of their ability? I don't, and in some ways, really addressing, for example, the infant capacity issue for childcare. So right now, I'm not sure if you're aware of these numbers, but roughly 160 kids are born every year at Aspen Valley Hospital. There are about 27 infant care spots, and that jumps up to 80 when children reach 18 months old. So I worry that we are losing moms or dads to the workforce for 18 months, after which it's very difficult to get back. Who knows if A, your job would be kept. It probably wouldn't in a town, in a valley like ours. And B, whether you have lost those types of skills, you know, the skills that are required to do your job well over that time period. And then C, childcare being so expensive, there are so many parents who choose to not work because it's essentially they're like, oh, well, what I pay in childcare is the same or more that, you know, my take-home pay. So why would I pay somebody else to take care of my child? We were so lucky we got a spot, but it was essentially in the beginning 3 days a week. So my husband Jason would do the Friday daddy daycare and walk around town with our little girl and sometimes another baby from, you know, another family. And then my mom would have her a day a week too. And so we were so lucky, but I don't know if we could afford a second kid, which I'm not going to have, but it's just not 2 5-day-a-week children in daycare runs about $3,000 a month, which is more than many people's mortgages, especially if they're in, you know, employee housing and whatnot. So it's just to make sure, and I don't believe that the city should be responsible for all of it or all of anything. I just believe that if there is a revenue source that we're using that money to the best of its ability. And it may not necessarily say be funding an entire thing, but is there a way to then have some sort of private-public partnerships where a business could actually make money on a daycare situation, but we've put up things like the space or the whatever it is. And I don't know the answers to it yet, but I know that it's possible to do.
How is that money being spent now?
Kids First does an amazing job. They do a lot of, and I might butcher it a little bit because the details are as you know, government is very complex. But
yes.
I know that they do teacher training, they do teacher support, they support the actual true cost of childcare on a daily basis quite nicely. So at my little girl's school, she goes to Wildwood now, the true cost of childcare is maybe, let's call it $150 a day. our daily rate is closer to $80 a day. So they are subsidizing heavily the actual true cost. And then they do subsidize, they do financial aid for families. I believe that the qualification standards of that financial aid is artificially low. And I need to get more information about it. But I do know that, as an example, only 45 families qualified last year. So it's something to the effect of, if you make $101,000, you know, and a dollar over, and again, could be butchering
But the concept is
the concept
there.
of it is that, so it's also just, and we know in this valley that $100,000 joint income, gross combined married income is barely sustainable in either the free market or in maybe a little bit more in employee housing, but it's not making anyone rich.
It sounds like a lot of money, but in truth, it's not.
Yeah. So for me, I was just I think that there's a way for us to look at that as an example creatively, and see if there's a way for there to possibly be a sliding scale of universal childcare per se, and I don't know what that upper limit is, but I do believe, I think let's talk about it as a community. Let's talk to our families. Let's see how many people we're losing to the workforce. Let's do the work to see whether there is a way to support I call this the missing middle. And it's the same sort of thing with housing, right? It's we are able to quite nicely house a lot of our and I will qualify a lot because I actually don't know how much of our workforce we house, but a number of our workforce. But we are losing our workforce that are sort of the lawyers and the medical reps and who make far too much money to qualify for housing, which is fine, but we're losing them to the community, to Down Valley free market. So there's, I believe that there's sort of a missing inventory, a group of inventory for people who may not qualify for up to category 4 or 5, but also can't afford RO, and there's some missing in the middle there. Did I answer your question ramblingly?
Yes, you did. Not particularly rambling.
Yeah.
But, I think it's beneficial to know that what pops into your mind is both daycare and housing as things that you're worried about, and that having a community that is welcoming to all kinds of economic levels, for lack of a better phrase, seems to be something that is motivating to you.
Yeah, it's you know what it is more than anything. It's just that I think at the moment we seem to be a little bit rudderless from a vision standpoint. Almost everything that comes across the desk of City Council at the moment just seems very fraught and wrought with so much. It just seems like it's a really, really difficult thing to make any decisions. And I believe that it's, and maybe naively so, but I believe that it's because we're not adhering or using the Aspen Area Community Plan as our sort of guiding force anymore. The last iteration of it was in 2012, and I was chatting to previous former Mayor John Bennett the other day, and he said that when he was on council and when he was mayor, he said it was actually just almost this. It was really fun to be on council, but mainly because their decisions were somewhat easy to come to because they had guiding principles. And I'm not saying that we don't. I just think that this next iteration of Aspen needs to be figured out by the community, and not City Council, not our city manager, not our ComDev, but everybody. We have to kind of come to the table with, very much like the Aspen Community Foundation, collective impact. And if we know what success looks like at 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, then we're all kind of swimming in the same direction. And again, I know this is naive and not going to be very easy, but I believe truly that if we have a goal then at least, you know, we're all sort of swimming in the same direction. And so that's the, you know, that's and I believe that once we get there, then other decisions will be easy. You know, part of what I'm talking about on the campaign is we need to determine how much of our workforce we want to house, and then aggressively pursue it. Everyone runs on housing, everyone talks about it, everyone campaigns on it, and then nothing really happens, right? And I know that a whole bunch of stuff happens in the background, and I know that but we're losing, like to Ward's point, we're losing deed restrictions, right? We can't build ourselves out of it. Like, I know that we can't do that, but is there something in the middle whereby we can start using, again, like leveraging the money that we have, that we're already collecting, that we have to, and in my normal day job as fiduciaries, we are responsible for doing the best of this work and using the best of our ability, using this to the best way. So I'm thinking about things like, how do we work on like down payment assistance programs? So maybe there's a way to like get motivated individuals to find their own free market units. And hey, it's not going to happen in Aspen, but in the APSHA, so in Aspen or Pickens County, maybe there's a way that we have a down payment assistance program where we say, hey, you go find your house, but in exchange, that house is going to be deed restricted. There are lots of creative ways like that I feel like we owe it to our community to explore. And let's just, and again, it goes back to kind of my like culture of possibility. I just feel like we're so stuck in a place of no in general, because people are fatigued with development or infighting or whatever it is, to flipping that to let's work together and go to a place, you know, get to a place of yes through rigorous debate.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, we'll see.
And
we'll see.
As someone who, you know, in my case, I came here 30-some years ago.
Wow,
and
yeah.
those issues were forefront.
Yeah.
Childcare.
Yeah.
Growth. Housing.
Yeah.
You know, and they're untractable kind of problems, but it takes fresh energy to keep trying to address them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and lots of people have, we as a community have benefited from having a full community, and our community members have benefited from being able to live here. So we can't have one without the other, you know?
Well, we only have about a minute left.
Okay.
And but I want to make sure that you've had a chance to, if you haven't had a chance to say something that you think is important to say it. I
think the most important thing about me is that I've already done the work in so many ways, so it's not as if I'm going to stop working on community issues regardless of whether I'm elected or not. We have a great, I've been chatting to people from all walks of life, and people are willing and happy and able to get together and try and solve problems. So that is the type of person I am. So, you know, regardless if I'm in or not, we'll continue these conversations and push our elected officials to do it. You know, I mean, that's how you get things done. You're the squeaky wheel. And I just, so that's really about it. It's also a grand experiment, right? There've been all these things that I've heard on the street, and one of them was like, oh, she's a working mom, and is she going to give up her real job? And I'm like, no, because, you know, whatever city council can pay me is probably going to be spent on childcare to serve our community. But we should be able to have a representative council. And if it means that it's untenable for a working mom to be on council, then it means that there's something wrong with the system. So that's me.
All right. Well, Kimbo, it's been great having a conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
I've loved it.
For running for office.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
And thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope this has been very helpful. And this concludes another episode of Probeline.